Michael Jordan never won any championships without Scottie Pippen. Like, that's the one thing people always forget. Michael Jordan never made it to the playoffs without Scottie Pippen, and Scottie Pippen made it to the playoffs without Michael Jordan.
George Borum has survived 11 bosses in 15 years and still believed enough in education to start his own school. That's either insanity or exactly the kind of radical hope that we need. Born in Queens and raised in Jersey, he's shaped by over 16 years of urban education. And he's not just an educator, he's a systems disruptor. He's taught, led, been in classrooms and in charter schools, spending 15 transformative years at the Henry Johnson Charter School in Albany. From teaching first grade to leading as a principal, he's seen and survived the bureaucracy, the burnout, and the bosses who break more than they build. In fact, with those 15 years and 11 bosses, he somehow has seen enough and still believes in education to launch his own school. Now, he's the visionary behind Schenectady Scholar Charter School. He's redefining what it means to educate our kids with excellence and empathy. A National Fellow of Liberated Ed and an emerging leader with the American Montessori Society, he's on a mission to blend rigorous academics with cultural responsive care. In this episode, we talk about surviving bad leadership, the hidden damages of no excuses education, what makes a bad teacher a better one, and how his soft-spoken strength and radical accountability are helping re-image school culture from the inside out. Get ready, because this is not just about school. This is about the soul of work, and George Borum is here to teach us class. Welcome to the show. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure for being on your show today.
Listen, we're going to have a great time because the conversation we had just to prepare for this was so much fun. So tell me how a guy like you goes from playing basketball to going into teaching.
Oh, man. So growing up in New York City and growing up in Far Rockaway, Queens, New York, it was like a birthright. If you grow up and you're a male in New York City, you're given a pacifier in a basketball. So that's pretty much how you get started. So growing up, living in New York City until we moved to sunny New Jersey, when I was about 10 years old, playing basketball was just a way of life. So as I got older, I was good, never great. I was never that tall to ever get a Division I scholarship, but I was able to go to a Division III school, play a little bit of basketball there, realized I wasn't going to go to the NBA. I wasn't going to be able to live out my hoop dreams. So I figured, let me focus on school. So what I ended up doing was focusing on my bachelor's degree, getting that, and then I minored in education. And while I was there, I wanted to be able to kind of get back all the knowledge that I got from coaching. And so I decided to open up the Yellow Pages and contact all the local high schools in the Portland, Maine area. One got back to me, and I was a volunteer assistant coach for my last 3 years. So that's how I kind of got into coaching and everything else.
So for our younger listeners who may know what a phone book
I forgot.
Like, before there were the interwebs, there were books that were sent to your house that were, I don't know, as thick as I don't know. Are there ancient books as thick as phone books?
Because we don't use dictionaries anymore either, so can't even say thick like a dictionary.
So these archives, these ancient relics of civilization,
information,
or a good 12 or 24 inches thick, and they had phone numbers in them because we had no other way to contact people than to finding their phone number in the phone book.
And you had to know alphabetical order. They had different sections. They had phone numbers of names. You really had to know your information on who you were trying to contact, because you'd be calling random people for hours until you got the right person. So yeah.
It's like, oh, his name is Anthony Brown, and there were like 17 A. Browns. You have just made me feel extremely old.
Apologize
Thank you
for
very
that.
much. I think the podcast is over. All right, so you looked in the phone book.
Yeah, I called them up, and one coach got back to me, Coach Russo in Portland, Maine High School, and he was like, sure. Later on, he said, I thought you were only going to last a week. You ended up lasting 3 years. It was a great experience for me to be able to learn how to coach, but also being around high school kids. But it also taught me how to play the second role to the leader right next to them and being able to be that comfort for students. But I was able to take that on as a leadership role as I kind of got older into education to learn how to play that excellent secondary role, like that second pivot in your building to just be that support for staff as well.
All right, so the two things I want to kind
Mhm.
of pull the thread on here is one is I just want to just put a penny in the meter or quarter in the meter to talk about the tenacity it took to like just keep making phone calls. Like, talk to me about that in your life, and then I want to go to the second chair conversation. So let's talk about like the like when did you get that tenacious? Because I don't know if I'd have called
So
everybody
I
phone.
was like bored, and I was just like, I'm doing all this work and I've been playing basketball my entire life, and just I think sometimes when you go to college, they tell you to turn the switch off. And if you've been playing sports and you've been playing sports since you were like 5 or 6 years old, when you get to college and you can't play anymore, it's just like you took a piece of my identity. Yeah, it takes a
It's
piece of your
depressing.
identity away from you. It's just like I've been doing this activity my entire life. It's been who I've been, how people have recognized me. And I was just like, you know what? Let me just open this book up. And I've always been like that. I've always been someone who's been like, you know, basketball has been helpful for me because I was able to work on my skills by myself. And I've tried to take everything that I've kind of done with that. If I wasn't a good reader, I wanted to be the best reader in class. If I wasn't good at this, I wanted to be able to improve. And I try to take all those skills that I've learned from basketball and kind of applied it to the rest of my life just to be helpful and supportive of me. So,
I like that. I like that a lot. Again, I don't know that I would have called everyone in the
thank you.
phone book,
Thank
but
you.
kudos to you, sir. Uh, so let's talk about the second chair thing. There was a movie. It's probably at least 6 or 7 years old called 20 Feet from Start. I'm going to talk
Mhm.
about the backup singers
Mhm.
to lead singers. And, you'd be surprised how many current singers or older singers were backup singers to
Mhm.
now celebrities, right? Talk to me about like when you realized the value of being in the second chair and like why you weren't salivating
I
over
think
that first seat.
when I was able to be the assistant coach of the JV coach, I realized that he could be able to really push the kids and be able to get them to a point of demanding a lot of them. And when they got frustrated, they would go to the end of the bench and sulk. And it was my job and my responsibility to go and rub their back and making sure, like, listen, I know the coach just said such and such to you, you're feeling some type of way, but we need you. We need your support. We need you to go back out there. So get yourself together. Let's talk about what the issue is, figure it out, and we got to get right back out there. So I learned in that 3 years how to play like that secondary role, how to be able to be supportive in the role that was needed. So I think that was the biggest step that I was able to gain was how can I be supportive of the leader by being in the second chair? What do they need me to play so the organization, the team can run and be more functioning? So that was the biggest piece I was able to learn. And I learned that at such a young age. I learned it from 19 to 21. So it really helped me as I got older when it was time for me to be in like a leadership role.
I'm gonna stay here, George, because I think it's such a powerful lesson. A lot of people that are very skilled, that
Mhm.
have just raw talent, often sit in the second chair and they are very scornful, very, that's an old word, scornful. But they're very just critical of the person in the first chair. Like, talk to me about, what you've seen, especially as an educator, and you've been an educator for decades now, right? Like, so talk to me about what you've seen in contrast to like how you do it versus other people do
We
it,
all want to
and let's go
be
from
able to
there.
say like we're the one in charge, and when you're an educator, any educator that tells you that they're not a control freak, they're absolutely lying. We're all control freaks. Anybody who's in education, anybody who's a teacher, a TA, doesn't matter. We're all control freaks. That's why we got into education, so we can control and manage this room. We use those words, but we're all control freaks. So first and foremost, any educator is a control freak by nature. So, but for me, playing like that second role was important because I think it helps support everyone around you. So when I became like a teaching assistant, there was a lead teacher and I was the assistant teacher. So the support he or she needed of me at that particular time, I would always start it off by like, what do you need me to do? Okay, if you need me to do those things, I'm going to maximize those things that you need for me to be able to do. And then when I became a dean or assistant principal or anything else, and including in, I've been married for 15 years and, we we are fantastic parents because I always say there are things I do really, really, really well as a parent, and I maximize that. Like I go well and beyond over those things. And anything that I'm weak at, my wife picks me up from that area and vice versa. And it's the same thing in the classroom. It's the same thing in leadership. I almost feel like a lot of people don't want to be Scottie Pippen, but a lot of people don't want to be co-president or vice president. But you learn so much from the position that you have.
Listen.
It could provide you the tools that you need to be a good leader. He
And
never
Pippen didn't get as
did.
much headache as
He got some
Jordan,
headache now.
right? Like
He got some headache now because he's
me
talking
and
about all
Pippen.
the things that he's spiteful about. But but at the time, in the moment, people realize Michael Jordan never won any championships without Scottie Pippen. Like that's the one thing people always forget. Michael Jordan never made it to the playoffs without Scottie Pippen, and Scottie Pippen made it to the playoffs without Michael Jordan. And those are the things that we kind of sometimes forget. Like playing that second role, you learn a lot from that spot. Yes,
Again, for the
yes,
younger audience, we want to share with you
we
that
all do because we
I'm
have
sure you
sneakers.
know who Michael Jordan is, but Scottie Pippen was
Yes,
the
the
Robin to the
original,
Batman
the
who was
original
known as
Robin
Michael
in
Jordan.
sports. Like
Right.
everyone uses him as like the prototype for any sport. Like he is the Robin to what's in such and such Batman. Like he is.
But I think this is a really good conversation to have. And I
No.
promise you, I don't know that I thought we were going to talk about this at all, let alone this long. But
Yes.
the idea of followership,
Hmm?
even when you have bad leadership, is so important because it's
Hmm.
easy to be critical of your leader. And listen, I have my own critiques of a ton of people, but you
Exactly.
never know what it's like until you're
And
in the seat,
the most creative people we've
right?
had, we all think of them, Steve Jobs, like everyone that we've always thought of. Like they've had somebody in their back who is doing that grind and working hard and making sure things were getting done. So like you have to be so self-aware to understand that like I'm not going to get any of this limelight. Like I'm not going to get any of this like shine. I'm not going to be on any magazines. I'm not going to be at the top of news. But everyone in this company is going to know it wouldn't have worked if that person wasn't there. Like that's what you need to take with you.
And I would even go a step further to say that a lot of people who play that role don't even want that kind of shine, right? It's important for us, especially if we're in the second, third, or fourth
Yes.
seat, to
Hmm.
really define what success is in that seat, right? Rather than trying to get, some level of pop, especially in the
Yeah.
age where everybody wants to be on
Yeah.
somebody's camera,
Always.
right? So, so let's talk about your entree into education. So you were the coach, and you decide, like, you know what, I want to teach the
Oh,
babies.
that
What
first
was the
year
first role
was
like?
awful. It was awful, like every first year teacher is. And I look back on it 16 years into it now, thinking how much of a poor teacher I was that those students had to get me in my first year. Like research says that teachers are better in their third year. So I can only imagine like how ineffective of a teacher that I was. And it takes a lot to be self-aware to understand like I had them for 10 months and I wasn't the most proficient at what I was doing. I tried my absolute best. I came in every day, tried to improve, and got better within that 10 months. But that first year was tough from classroom management to understanding curriculum, to understanding kids, to understanding parents, to getting them to understand what I'm asking them to do. It was extremely hard in that first year.
Like, what was the so classroom management is like the time management to
Yeah.
deliver what you've planned. Curriculum design is like, okay, here's what I want to
Mm-hmm.
teach them, and am I
Yeah,
effective or
absolutely.
not in
I
delivering
remember
the message
that
when they
first
get it?
week we had Fun Friday, and my lead teacher, who had several years of experience, they were going to a teacher lead meeting, and I got them all by myself for 30 minutes. I was like, okay, we're going to do something absolute fun. 25 first graders. I'm thinking, I got this, no problem. No, they absolutely wore me out for that 30 minutes to the point where I needed my parent liaison to come in and absolutely save my life and probably save my job that week because the class was that bad. She came in, said like four words, and everyone got quiet. And I've been speaking for like 30 minutes, and she did it in 30 seconds. And she gave me the best piece of advice I ever said. Said, you better get it together or they're going to walk over you for the next 9 months. And you're going to hate coming here every day. So I got it together after then. Hmm.
That is so funny. So, how did you stay motivated after the kids ate your lunch that first year? Like, cause it, and a lot of, I can't imagine failing my first year of anything, right? Like in the environments that I've been in, like you've got
No.
to put points on the board. There's not a whole lot of room for error. In this teacher series, I've heard most teachers say, like, yeah, look, the first one just, it's like, it's kind of like, um, when you're taking
Yeah.
score and it's like just throw out the lowest score kind of thing. Like teachers kind of just accept that that
That
first year is
first
going to be a
year
wash.
was a wash because I think sometimes you forget, like, you don't know. And you can go and do a teacher prep program, you can do student teaching, but it doesn't prepare you for the first day of school. When you have those faces looking back at you and they know without knowing. We always say, like, kids can just smell the fear in a teacher when they first walk in. And I don't think that as much as I used to, but they can tell when you're not prepared. And there were days when I was not prepared and I didn't know my content. I didn't know my lesson. I didn't know what I was going to do if a student did A. And as I got better with my craft, I could start planning out if a student was doing this, this is what I'm going to do. I knew the content better. So it just started to flow naturally better. I was able to give the kids more of my personality and was able to understand them a lot more. So once you get out of that first year, it's like, yeah, you just got to make it out of the first year. If you can make it out of the first year unscathed and you feel like you want to come back, that's that's the success. Make it out of your first year with some level of success. You'll be a great teacher coming down the road. I promise.
All right, so you make it out that
Hmm.
first year. Then what happens? You decide to
Oh,
stay. Tell me about like your first bad boss
oh man, I've had so many.
situation
So
in education and
what?
teaching.
The first one
Just the
was
first one. Give me the first one.
first principal I had. She stayed in our office every single day. Never left ever. And the only time she left her office was when we knew somebody was getting fired because she would be walking around someone she just interviewed. So we would all start whispering, like, oh, she walking around. She never up here. We were like, oh, somebody getting fired. Who getting fired today? Somebody going. Somebody's going. So we knew. And we always would know. And this was very messed up because all the lead teachers at that time were white and all like the TAs were like black. So we knew if she was walking around someone who was black, was like some TA's getting fired today. Someone's got to go. Someone's on the block. So it was just like the way that she manipulated like the staffing there wasn't conducive for us to have a very good like working sort of relationship, especially around race. So whenever we saw those sorts of things, everyone picked up on it really, really quick. And even though we tried to have conversations around that, it was never like understood like what that appearance looked like if you were a black or brown staff member. See? Hmm.
There's so, there's so much to talk about here. So
Oh,
y'all had
absolutely.
your little underground railroad of knowing the things, right? So
Yeah,
in every company, in every network, there's
absolutely.
an underground of people who know the things that are going on. So you all have these conversations, and I would
Hmm.
imagine both the teachers and the TAs knew it because they would know, right? And tell like did anybody
I mean,
ever
we
try to like
tried to
say the
tell
quiet part out
her the
loud?
quiet part out loud, but she would always get defensive. And also, she would also play the card that her husband was black. So it always was kind of like, well, I can't do that. My husband, like, we were like, oh, okay, okay, that's your card to use in this conversation. But we were just like, it looks because you have, you know, the black like teachers who are which we didn't have a lot of lead teachers that were black. They were all TAs. Like we were in charge of like classroom management, making sure we like kids went to lunch and recess. So we had this huge relationship with the kids that wasn't just in the classroom. It was outside of the classroom. It was getting them off the bus, putting them on the bus, interacting with parents. So anytime parents had like an issue or something positive, they would always go to the TAs, and then the TAs would always have to relay it back to the lead teacher. So it became a place where like parents were just interacting with the TAs. And even though we had conversations around that, it never got fixed or never wanted to have like a larger conversation about what the appearance looked like to the larger public of parents.
And for as a teaching assistant, what was the functional relationship between you and the lead teachers? Were they aware enough to like let's bury this because we don't have time for it and let's have a good relationship, or did it create like a
It
bureaucracy of
in
like the
some
haves and the
classrooms, if you had a
have-nots
good
and we're
relationship
better
with
than
your lead
kind of
teacher,
thing?
it did. If you didn't, it was a hierarchy because it became almost if the TA wasn't there, some classrooms function in a way that the students would only listen to the TA. And then they would listen to the teacher only if the TA was in the room, but if the TA was out, was absent, wasn't there for a day or two, and then, in any business, we played a game of, well, I'm just not going to come to work today. We'll see what the classroom looks like. So no, we always played those games. So in education, that's a big thing. Like if you take a day, I'm gonna take a day. I'm taking my day off. So if you take Monday off, I'm taking Tuesday off, and we be back on Wednesday. So yeah, absolutely. People would just, if you take Monday, I'm gonna
Y'all
take Tuesday.
straight
So
had a
don't take
mutiny
off
in the
because you're
school.
gonna be by yourself the next day. So don't do it.
All right, so you survive. So you
Hmm.
guys tried to confront. It's unsuccessful. You survived that.
Hmm.
I think that what strikes me about that situation
Yeah.
is the potential lack of discretion that the leader had, or maybe it was intentional. There's a ton of research on how fear in the workplace is extremely toxic for productivity. So I can't
Hmm.
imagine the level of anxiety that would create for the organization and the loss of productivity, because even if the interviewee was walked, or the candidate was
Yeah.
walked through one
Taxing.
hallway, people will spend time saying like, "Hey, did you see what happened?" Like, and so it just creates this
Yeah, and
interesting
we all
snowball
knew
effect
what
of like
was going on,
inefficacy.
and we weren't like naive to it. Like we picked it up. Like adults are smart. Sometimes when you become a leader, you feel like you're the smartest person in the room. When in reality, you're not. Like your staff culture is huge, especially in education. It's massive because we talk about like two different kinds of culture. We talk about school culture, then we talk about staff culture, and we generally talk about school culture more than anything else because you want to have a safe, nurturing environment for all students and staff. But that staff culture is just as important. And if it's not, and people can tell the difference between you finally coming out of your office and the only reason why you're doing that is for a new hire, then that's going to lead to problems in our school, which it did because people picked up on that and then didn't want to stay or wanted to leave.
So what I hear you saying is that staff culture and school culture is not mutually exclusive; they're interdependent. And in what ways in your career, over the arc of your career, seen them work well together?
I've had the fortunate pleasure of being in really good staff culture. And one of the things that was the most dominating force is that we supported each other in ways outside of work. So we would go to each other's families' gatherings and we would be able to understand and support each other. So when you came to work, you knew that person always had your best interest. So when they gave you feedback maybe that you didn't want to hear, you knew it was a place of like compassion, empathy, but also love to get you better so you can get better at your craft. Because if you want to stay here, like we need you to get better, and this is how you can get better. And I've learned over the years, like when you have a culture like that, especially in education, because you spend so much time in the classroom, you spend so much time with your peers that you have to have this level of relationship. That's why you see so many teachers outside of work hang out with each other and do activities and stuff like that. It's a very, for so many words like cliques and stuff like that when it comes to certain grade levels or certain teachers, or this is the math team and this is the ELA team and this is the PE team. It's like we do a lot of that.
So how much of that is coping versus connectivity? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because sometimes when you're in trying situations, like I'm just gonna be here and commiserate and cope with you, versus like we are connected and we're living this thing out together.
I think that's part of it because part of it is just being able to say like we in this together. Like if you gotta suffer, we all gotta suffer. So we gonna suffer together. Then we need to be able to come together to be able to understand like what's for the greater good. And that's what we always used to say. Like regardless of who is sitting in that hierarchy chair as principal of our building, we still got to do it for the kids because at the end of the day, like we have to perform for our kids, and especially working in a charter where you're working sometimes off of a 5 year renewal, especially in New York State. Like if you're a charter and you don't get a 5 year renewal, you get closed. And you're an at will employee. So after the you don't have a contract that's 2 or 3 years, you have a 10-month contract. So if you don't get renewed for the next year, you don't have a job. So you constantly have to learn to get better at your craft.
So talk to me about charter schools. When did you start your love of charter schools versus, I don't want to say versus public schools, but opposed to public schools, right? Because you've been in both spaces.
Yeah, so I think my love for charters have always come from a place of giving parents choice and options. Like I grew up, my mother sent me and my brother both to Catholic schools, and then when I moved to New Jersey, I went to a public school. Like that was her option. She could have sent me to a Catholic school, but she chose to send me to a public. And that's the biggest thing with charters. I know there's this always this animosity between public and charter and stealing funds and stealing kids, which I've never understood how a charter can physically steal a child from a public school. Like we don't go in and physically take them and steal them from their parents and make them come here. It's like it's a choice that a parent wants. And if we are offering a parent something that they're interested in doing, like a longer school day and a longer school year, and parents are enjoying that, then they have the option to be able to come to a charter. If they don't, then obviously they will stay at a public school, which might be high performing, or they just feel more comfortable being at a public school. So I feel as though giving parents that choice is the most important thing.
Okay. So so you move from the public school to the charter school piece. Tell me about the leadership differences between public and charter.
I think the biggest thing in most charters is we don't have a teachers union behind us, so it's very much an at will. So we work in an environment where, like I said before, you know, we have a 10-month contract or a 12-month contract that we're working for that school year, and we have to get renewed. And also, we're working under the umbrella of, okay, we have this 5-year renewal. So in 3 or 4 years, the authorizer is going to come in and look at our scores, look at our enrollment, look at our finances, look at our operations. And if we're not up to snuff, we get closed. And the difference between like public is just like there aren't many public schools being closed after like 5 years of just opening. So you really have to make sure that everything you're putting in place is academically sound for kids. And also that you're hiring the correct staff, because you have a very small window and you can't afford to have a teacher that is behind or failing that's there for 3 or 4 years. You just can't, because you can't move them to like another building or to a higher grade level or anything else like that. You just don't have that option.
So in your tenure, and I don't know if it was in the charter schools or not, but like at one point you had 11 leaders in 15 years.
Yes. I have a record. Yeah, I have a record. Yes, all in charter. So I've had 11 different building leaders, including myself. I was principal for 3 days. I had the best 3 year tenure of any principal in the history of our building.
The 3 dates.
Yeah,
Was it over the
three
weekend,
days.
George? It was over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
No, I did a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I did a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I got interim principal on Friday, and then I was off interim by Wednesday. And if you ask any of my old staff, they'll say I was the best principal in 3 days. Why? Why? Because our schedule said that we were going to end
For
school
three
on
days.
Wednesday. I had the ability because when you're in a charter and transportation becomes an issue. So for some odd reason, someone didn't look at the calendar really well. So we were going to have to pay for busing for 3 extra days, and it was going to be like $180,000. And I was just like, we don't have that right now. The director of finance told me. I said, okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to tell parents on Monday there's no school on Tuesday and Wednesday. So came up with this very crafty conversation I had with parents and let them know. I said, listen, we have 3 days left. 2 of these are half a days. We can't afford transportation, so today's going to be the last day of school. Kids were applauding me. I was getting high fives. And then, listen, on Tuesday we had kindergarten graduation. On Wednesday we had fourth grade graduation. It was beautiful. And then I was all done. So no one could complain about my principalship because I ended school early. And the kids love me. The teachers love me. And that's 2 out of the 3 stakeholders that really appreciated it. So I'll take that. 75%. I was shooting 75%. I'll take it.
Just so listen, let's talk about the third stakeholder, because as a parent, I will tell you
Ooh.
there is nothing that gets me to the highest levels of
Hmm?
irritated than seeing that my child who
Yeah,
goes
no doubt.
to, I think they're like trimesters, right? So, but it's like every other week she's off on a Friday. Every other, like,
Yes,
what did the
yes.
parents say to you?
So,
Like just
so I
busting
only
because
have one
they got to
parent
work,
that got
George.
mad.
They got to
Just
work,
one parent that got frustrated
especially in New York.
because I only have one. That's it.
Mm-mm. No, 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 no. Let me help you
They
out.
didn't. You know
You had
why?
one parent
Because
that said they were
I
mad.
had
Them
such
other
a good
parents was upset
relationship with
with you. They
parents.
just ain't
They
say
would come
nothing.
up to me and they would be like, "What you doing?" I'd be like, "Listen, it costs about $180,000, and y'all know y'all not gonna bring your kids for a half a day anyway. So why you pretending?" And they were like, "Yeah, you got it. You know, they wasn't coming Tuesday or Wednesday anyway because it was a half a day." I said, "Exactly. So we ain't got to do all this. You know what? We'll see you next year. Have a great summer. Let us know if you need anything. We'll see you in September. And they'd be like, you got it. I was like, okay. Enough said. Only one parent called and got upset. I explained it. He was still upset. But I was like, one parent out of 375 was like, and I, two of the three of the stakeholders thought it was the best decision. The kids and the teachers shooting 75%. I'll take that any day.
So let's talk about these. I'd have been hot. I'd
No.
probably be that dude calling you like, look, man, you can close the school, but you got to take her. So look,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
look, talk to me about the stakeholders, because one of the things that I'm finding is that, unlike a person that works in like
Yep.
a corporate situation or even a small business, right?
Mm-hmm.
We try in most cases to have one boss, right? The person that gives you
Yeah.
direction, whatever. In education, it's just an interesting dynamic of having both the administration, the students, the parents, the federal requirement. Like, it's a lot of things pulling at you. How do you manage that in a way that
I
doesn't
think
suck the life
having
out
those
of you?
conversations with all of your stakeholders and being able to be upfront with them. I think when you end up like clouding it in jargon where no one understands, that's when you get like people, you get lost. Like if you just tell parents and tell teachers and even tell students, like this is what we got, like this is what we need to be at. I think we're completely honest with people. When we start getting into like this heavy jargon of things that no one really understands, that's when you start losing them. Like just tell parents like completely upfront, like this is where we are at a school, this is where we need to be at, this is the support that we need to have from you. I think they're more willing to listen to you if you tell them what you need from them as opposed to just giving them constant information. Just what do you need from me as a parent? Do you need me to make sure that my kid reads 20 minutes at a time? Do you need me to be able to make sure that their homework is done? Like those sorts of things are extremely helpful.
So let's talk about parent partnership. And it comes to your experience. Tell me about some of the straining parental relationships you've had. Like, again, as stakeholders, like, what are some of the challenges you had, and what would you want to see from parents as an
So
educator?
I have this theory like because when I first started, and I'm going to age myself back in 2008, I realized a lot of my parents were like older parents. So when they saw me, they were like, "You my child's age. Don't." I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. When I was
Watch
older
it,
parents who
Borum.
were
Watch
like,
it,
"You
Borum.
look like my son's age."
Older
Yeah,
parents.
like I had a lot of, I had a lot of, I had a lot of
Like, you got
like
a kindergartner with
30
a
to
60
40
year
year
old
old
parent.
like
Like, you
parents.
got to
I had some
qualify
grandmas
older.
and stuff like that. They would be like, "You my son's age. What are you talking to me about my child?" So they were so involved. Like they were actively involved in day to day. They were, by most standards, helicopter parents, if you want to be able to call them. I think as we progressively have gotten like towards now, obviously parents are like obviously younger, and we're seeing like a huge different dynamic on like their interactions with teachers and with the schools because I think their experience in schools may not have been as great and as may have not been as warm. So they're willing to like push back and challenge. That's why you see a lot of like challenges with parents like pushing back on schools. And it doesn't always end up in like spoken in the right way. But I think like a generation before me had maybe a more positive experience interaction with schools and with teachers than this generation of parents who did with schools because like look at all the things we just pushed into schools for parents. I think that's part of the problem.
So for the
Young oh
benefit of
my,
those listening,
yes,
your
yes, yes. I'm
generation,
40, so I think a lot of
you're
what we did
you're
with
millennial.
kids,
Okay.
especially parents that are anywhere between their 20s and like early 30s, is they went to school, especially if you went to charters. Like we did like this sort of no excuse model charters where we wanted to just harp on very small things, making sure your shirt was tucked in, make sure you had a belt, and we would send kids home if we didn't. Like we would suspend kids. We wanted to instill these expectations for kids very much in the classroom, and by doing those things, I think they had a negative experience. So anytime anything resembled that, they come very hard at schools and stuff like that. Rightfully so, because they have their own trauma from that experience. And that's something that we have to kind of have a conversation about with parents about what was their experience in schools and how can we address those and make sure that it doesn't look like the same thing for their kids.
So it's interesting because I was talking to someone else who said part of their challenge is that the parents don't know that they should be
Mm,
helping.
that's true too. Parents, Because we haven't explained to parents what we want them to do. We tell parents to be with your kids 20 minutes a day. Make sure you check their homework, and make sure you get them to school on time. Like that's like okay, like there's so much that goes into K-12 experiences that's more than just that. Like you have to realistically at the dinner table, what's your favorite subject? What did you guys do? Asking open-ended questions, like those sorts of things. But how many parents are like prepped with that? How many parents had conversations with their kids that look like that? So if you're not trained as a parent that your parent did that, what's the expectation for us? So as schools, we have to be able to bring parents in, have conversations with them about like, listen, these are the things we need you to be able to work with your kids at home. So when they are doing a reading comprehension lesson, because you had a long conversation with them, this question that they about to answer, they're already familiar with. Like those are the sorts of things that we need to do.
Yeah, I agree. I will tell you, I treat both
Mm-hmm.
of my children's education like a performance
Exactly.
management plan,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm like, okay, now what is the goal
Exactly.
for the end of this year?
Mm-hmm.
Where are they along the line of continuum? What do we need to work on? Tell me what they're doing well.
Yeah.
Like, because at the end of the day, I'm trying
Exactly.
to make them fully functional adults. And so I won't be like the Bill Cosby
I got
episode
10
where
more
he couldn't
years.
get all the people out of his house. Like, I need them out of my house, George. So we
Yeah.
need to make sure that they can do all of
Why?
the things, right? It's like, are we on schedule? And if we're not, I can accept not being on schedule, especially with a
Mm-hmm.
kid who has a neurodiverse need. Cool with that. I just need to
And are
make
you
sure
asking
we're
the
always
teachers?
making some kind of
Mm-hmm.
progress,
Yeah.
even if the progress is failure
But
and
what are we
learning,
like?
right?
And those are the conversations that we need to be able to have with parents. And I always tell parents all the time, like, a lot of the experiences maybe you had, like, did your parents talk to you about school? And some of them, a lot of times I would ask them, we would do new parent orientation, and I would talk about all the things that we do here at school. And I would say, like, raise your hand if your parents spoke to you when you came home every single day for 15, 20 minutes. And a lot of the hands at the beginning of my career were up. As my career went later and later on, the hands were down. And that wasn't the case. And I implore parents, like, have a conversation with your kid, ask them how their day was. What did they learn? Like, why was that important? Like those sorts of things that we need to be able to do. But we also have to train parents to be able to be a community school where we are teaching our parents what we want them to be able to do. So like a lot of parents had really tough experience. Like they had schools that thought like let's do the broken window theory of teaching students in schools.
What's that? Tell people what
So
that is. The broken
so
window
like
theory.
so broken window theory was an approach of like a criminologist back in the 70s. So coming out of the 60s and, civil rights and we seen riots in Detroit and Newark and New York and all places. So this criminologist comes up with this idea that if you have a car that has been busted out of the windows and the hubcaps off and the tires are there, you're going to start getting a little bit of crime. Then you have graffiti on the building, then you're going to have more crime. So the plight is the idea that like if you have a broken window, it's just going to lead to more and more crime. So what schools did coming out of like late 90s going into the 2000s was we started developing schools around this idea. If kids' shirts are not tucked in, then it's going to lead to more suspensions. So if you don't have your shirt tucked in, you don't have a belt on, you're not doing your homework, you got to leave school. So that's what we did. So a lot of kids who now are parents are like, I don't want that experience for my son or daughter. So the minute they get any resemblance of that, because we never explained to parents why we were doing it that way. So nowadays we have to be able to explain to parents more and more about our approaches, not from an academic standpoint, but just from an overall standpoint.
And I think as a stakeholder, you owe it to them. Like, here's the contract we're trying to go for, right? And
Yeah.
otherwise, what are we doing other than
Yes. Mm,
babysitting? So let's talk about this 11 leaders in 15 years. So you have your 3-day
mm.
principalship, and then what happens? Like, you
The
said the
best.
best. I will not forget it. So,
The
so
best.
tell me
Thank
about
you.
some of these other 11 rotating leaders. Like, what was going on? Were they not hiring well? Were they weren't built for it? Did they in over their head? Like, what was going on, and how did it affect you?
So my first 4 years, I had one building leader. And then after that, we started getting a new building leader. And our first building leader was from out of state, came from Michigan. He ended up staying half the school year because just didn't work out. But as a staff, we knew we had to come together and work together. We would always say like he's out making an album. So like we would come up with random things like, and then we got another building leader who was from New York State, but we were an urban school, and our board decided to hire somebody from a rural community 45 minutes away from an urban area, and it wasn't new to her. She had no idea what she was doing. So we would always want to do this splashy hire. We're going to do a nationwide search. We had a principal from Detroit. We had a principal from Vegas. We had a principal from Tennessee. And we just kept bringing in all these names from out state. And it just never worked out because they weren't familiar with the community. They didn't get comfortable with our students. They didn't get comfortable with our families. And it was about making a splashy hire. It's about being able to say, we got a principal from Vegas. We got a principal from Michigan, as opposed to just being like, okay, we're hiring the best candidate locally because we want to be able to support what parents want. And people who know Albany or know the area that you're around
But how does
makes
that
them feel more
affect you as a
comfortable.
teacher? We've decided that you're good second chair. You're still in the classroom. Like how did that suck for you?
So in my so literally my first 4 years, I had one principal, and then the next year, my last year in the classroom, I had my second principal. And when he left, we just kept chugging along and finished out the year. And then literally that next year, I became an administrator. So then I went through this span of just having all of these second these all these different administrators coming with these ideas of what the mission and vision was, even though we knew what it was because it was right there on the wall, but their vision of how do we get to that excellence. In playing second chair, I was able to use all those skills that I used back when I was an assistant coach to help me be able to filter in this new person with a new personality from a different geographical background to be able to help support them without them thinking, oh, you just want my job. Or why didn't they just give it to you? Because everyone came in and literally asked me that, why aren't you principal? That's what they would
And so
all say to start off the
how did you
conversation. Why
reconcile
aren't
that
you
in your
principal?
mind though? Like knowing that at least you have the respect of your peers, right? And you have the respect of the stakeholders. What
Yeah.
did you ever ask,
Mhm.
like, I don't know, the chair of the board or anybody, like, look, okay, tell me what I'm not doing.
Mhm. So I probably, and I'll be honest, I self sabotage myself. So I said one of two things. I said the one time we were in a transition, our board chair came to our building and spoke to me and said, like, we're your principal left without you guys knowing he's no longer here. And this is when my 3 day interim, and they asked, I said, how would you feel about being a principal? And I told them, I said, I can't be principal here because I know the staff too well. And it would be hard for me to let somebody go when I've gone to a barbecue at their house. I'm too connected to the building to be able to run the building effectively. You have to bring somebody from the outside. I can help and support them, but I can't run this building because I will have to make decisions for staff that I've grown too close to because we've had so many different building leaders. And for me to have kept them here, they knew that I could always be that support that they could lean on during a difficult time. Even though we had different building leaders or they didn't like a different teacher, they could always come to me for that level of support. When I had to step into that role, I was going to lose that. And I didn't want to.
I don't know that that sounds like self sabotage, as much as a deliberate choice.
Or maybe a career suicide, maybe I chose to do as opposed to taking over them.
So looking back though, would you have done it different?
No, absolutely not. Everyone asks me like now that you are like I'm no longer working there. I worked there for 15 years. No, because I always like at the end of the day, I think back on my 15 years there and having all the building leaders that we have had, and but I think about all the relationships that we made with staff there. And to some of them who have left to go teach at a public school, I've had superintendents contact me and say, whatever you guys did there, this teacher is fantastic and wonderful. So whatever you guys did there was great. Thank you for that. Like you really get a superintendent from a public school to call a charter or any in general just to say like thank you for that, or a principal would call and reach out, or just to be able to say like whatever you guys did at that particular time to get this teacher where they are at, like they're a joy and a pleasure to be able to have here. So I think back on like we did such a good work. We were independent charter. We were mom and pop. We stayed open for. They're still open now, and I think that's more rewarding because schools, especially charters, can become like Pepsi and Coke, like a conglomerate. You can have all these schools with all the same name, but we were independent. We were mom and pop. We worked off of that, and
Wait,
we
wait, wait.
loved that
Explain
basically.
the conglomerate of charter schools to me.
So
Like
you have
franchising?
different charter schools that, yeah, almost franchise. I would say like there are like franchising of charter schools that you hear the name, it's just like, oh, okay. They have schools in New York, they have schools
Okay.
in Florida, they have schools in Texas. They could be high performing schools, but they're also a level of like any kind of grocery store that you see around in your area. There's a lot of them. So they all have the same mission or the same vision. Now you can bring that business to that particular area, but does it hold any value because it's not like homegrown? Like being an independent charter, we were independent. We worked off of word of mouth. We had second, third generation kids
Mhm.
that were in our building because their older brother went there, and then they had kids, and then they brought a cousin and a nephew, and great grandmother kids went here, and they liked this teacher in second grade, so they signed them up for kindergarten to make sure that they got that second grade teacher. Like we worked off of those sorts of things. And sometimes when you become like a larger conglomerate of things, you kind of lose that homegrown piece to it.
So you leave the classroom, go into administration, then you become
Mhm.
building manager. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So I go through the three different roles, name titles, but they're all the same thing. I went from being a dean to assistant principal, then to principal for behavior and culture. So I did all the day to day sort of stuff. Open the building, close the building, greeted kids when they come off, did the level of like when teachers were out planning that pieces of things. So like if you needed something fixed or done or I knew where everything was. So I managed the building day to day. So it made life easier for our principal for academics. It made life easier for our head of school at that time to be able to work on like bigger picture things where I dealt with like the day to day sort of things of a parent complaint or, something was broke or the AC wasn't working. Who do I need to call just to be able to get somebody here and
so
stuff like
like an
that?
operational triage kind of thing.
Yeah, it was every day because somebody would always call out. Some kid would throw up in the middle of the hallway and couldn't find the janitor. So you got to get the gloves on, you got to get the mop out, you got to get it off the floor before we transition. Like those sorts of things that keep a building
Yeah.
moving, you need to always have a second person who's ready to be able to work and be able to get those things done.
So, I mean, what I love about your path is that you've gone up through the ranks, and now let's talk about where you are now. Like what's different for you? What have you learned, especially from some of the bad leaders? Like I'm never doing that what they did. Like I'm never doing those three things. Like give me some of that. Talk to me about that.
I think having soft skills, especially with newer teachers that you're coming in, I think when I was coming in, it didn't like matter if the leader liked you or not. Like you just work just to work. I feel like now you have to work for somebody you like, who generally cares about your well-being and making sure that like it's not just about what's in the classroom, about worried about you as an individual. So my biggest thing in learning, one of the things I've learned is like, it's simple things. Like, how was your weekend? Remembering your staff's kids' names, and if they play soccer, like, oh, how was that soccer game yesterday? Like doing those sorts of things, it affirms that you like understand. One of the things that I did before I left at Henry Johnson last summer was we had like 40 or 50 staff. Like I hand wrote a note to every single staff member before I left because I thought it was important for them to be able to just understand, like, even though this might have been your first year or this is your 15th year with me, like I appreciate the time that you put in being here. So I think on my journey right now, trying to open up a charter school, I think using those skills when it comes to leadership, but also getting people to understand like what my mission and vision of the school that hasn't even been built yet is the biggest takeaway from that.
And it's a personal peeve, but I don't like the term soft skills. Be,
Okay,
and it's for me, it's they are life skills. Like if you never learned
got
how
you.
to do calculus, it is far more important for you to learn how to talk to people. Right? Like it's far more important for you to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to resolve conflict. Yes, we all need technical skills, but
Mm-hmm.
the receiving end of the educator space. So we receive all the people that you guys educate, and then we get them in the workforce. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to. They don't know how to have conflicts. They don't know how to debate. They don't know how to negotiate. It's
Hmm.
funny. I was
Yeah.
talking to someone. I was coaching somebody the other day, and they were like, "Well, I don't like this, and I don't like that, and I don't like that." And I'm like, "Well, it sounds like you don't prefer a lot of things, and that's fine. You can have preferences,
Hmm.
but your inability to pinpoint the difference between your preference and a necessity is blocking your ability to progress. So, how do you
Hmm.
negotiate so you can get further rather than just being mad at the things that aren't like the way you want them to be? And for me, I feel like a big miss in education is really honing in on just these fundamental people skills, like to be able to
Yes.
connect and operate. Because even if you are a coder in the back western wing of some big conglomerate, you still got to know how to talk to people. And so
Hmm.
for me, it's always interesting. And I think in the age of digital and all things AI, and we
Hmm.
don't know what's real, authenticity and being able to manage relationships is going to be the chief thing that makes people successful in this day and age.
I completely agree with that. I think when I was coming up, even just growing up, like just like that level of like we're just gonna grind. We're just gonna like you're coming to work to work. Doesn't matter if you like your boss. It doesn't mean anything. You need to come to work, and that was like the approach that I had for my first like several years. Like especially when I first became a dean, very like late in my 20s, my fifth year in education. I was like, I don't care if the teachers like me. Who cares? Like, you're gonna do your job because I'm the boss and I'm telling you what to do. And I had to learn that skill. Like, oh, people don't like that. Like, okay, like I had to try a different approach. Like, they don't like that too much. Like, okay, like, and that's not even my personality. But I figured like that's how I see bosses were on TV, and that's what I've read in books, and like that's the mindset you had to have. And I didn't know you could shift the mindset because every boss that I've ever had, even when I was working at a movie theater when I was in high school, did the exact same thing. So my high school basketball coach was the exact same way. Everything was very stern and very to the point when giving feedback. Like you're going to do this because I told you to,
Command and
not because
control.
exactly. So when I got to become a leader, I didn't know that you could deviate and
Mm.
be something unique or innovative in your building. But as I've gotten older and I've become more read, I understand that now.
Has anybody ever given you, like, do you recall anybody giving you that feedback? Like, look, boss, I don't work that way. Like when you,
Now,
okay.
now I feel more comfortable with myself being able to access. I think early on I did not feel super comfortable, but what ended up happening was those who, when I became a leader, those who were my friends as teachers was just like, that's not you. Why are you acting like that? Like you, that's not you. That's never been you. So why are you pretending to be this human that we've never interacted with? Like you can be the leader of the building. We respect you, but you don't need to act like that or treat people like that. You've never done that before. And I had to take that and sit with it.
I appreciate having people in your life who know you well enough to give you the
Hmm.
mirror and be like, let's look at this and see
Yeah.
if this is you.
Hmm.
And I also, it lends itself to really having people, whether you're listening or watching or whatever, just think about the kind of leader you would want to be, whatever the situation is, and be intentional about
Hmm.
it. I do think there are certain, we talk about this sometimes when we're facilitating and training. There are some times where command and control is important. When the building is on fire, I don't have time for you
Hmm.
to like me, get out the building, right?
Hmm.
And then there are
Hmm.
times
Hmm.
where we need to work together and negotiate. I think there's space for each style, but any style overused is dangerous. So I can
No,
appreciate that.
no. And I think that that's the case sometimes that we have to just figure out all those pieces. And I think it's been hard for me, and I think, but over time you grow and you just become like you improve and you get better. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've tried to gain is just how do you get better each and every day, and that's how I kind of take the approach to doing things.
So you are now in a different seat altogether, right? So your love for charter school has spawned something new in your life. Tell us about what all of the surviving the 11 bosses and 15 years
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
learning your own leadership style. Where are you now in this space?
Oh, I'm in the space of trying to open up my own. charter school, Schenectady Scholar Charter School. It's would be the first Montessori charter school in Central New York, free tuition.
You got first of all, you got to define because there's
Oh,
a lot
sorry,
of for those who are not in
sorry.
education, there's a lot of different or
Yes,
the first
yes,
Montessori
yes.
charter
So
school. So let's
charter.
talk
So
about
we,
the
mhm,
recipe, the gumbo of things you got
sure.
going on in that title.
So most people, when they hear Montessori, especially in or around this area where I live at, it's usually affluent, white, typically very expensive school to be able to get into. And Montessori is an approach where, freedom with limits. And it's very much it's mixed age classrooms, so it's a very unique learning style and learning approach to having schools. It's was something that was adopted many years ago, which has been co-opted typically in more affluent areas. And what I wanted to do, especially after COVID, was over the years charters have been very structured. Some people would say even like it's very rigorous, but it doesn't allow itself to be able to be flexible. And what I wanted to do was to have a charter school that was very flexible. So thinking about this approach, it was just like, let's put these two ideas together. Because 10 or 15 years ago, I could never see how these two opposite ends of the spectrums could come together. I said, if we blend these two models together and take the pieces that we enjoy, we can still have a longer school day, a longer school year, but not have this high level of compliance in the building where we're drawing lines in the hallway, making kids walk on it. We can have freedom with limits. We can teach the kids what we want them to be able to do. We can use hands on materials like they use in Montessori, but we can also prepare kids to be able to be doctors and lawyers by using both of these approaches. So I was like, we could still do this. It's just going to look different. It's going to sound different, but it could be innovative for especially black and brown families who need a different approach, who just need a different option. And that's what we want to offer. It's just a different option for families.
What makes that option so much more important, at least now in
Oh,
this day and
that's,
age?
oh, great question. I think we have been stagnant on like what our approach is. So like, okay, if we go to public school, public schools look like this. We go to charters, they look like this. Okay. And then that's it. And then if you're lucky and you're affluent, you have opportunities to maybe send your kid to a more affluent school, or you have money to be able to send your kid to a Montessori school. It affords you these opportunities, the more money and resources they have, or just geographically where you live at. What I want to be able to do is blend these two ideas together and be able to make it work for families who typically wouldn't have the opportunity to be able to go to one or the other options.
Listen, man, I'm excited. So, where are you on this journey, and how can
Oh,
folks support you?
listen, so our application was due April 8th. We were able to get our application in because it is an extremely a heavy lift. I wrote together a 567-page document because you have to put all these things together. So if you think of a school and all the documents that go into it, and one of the big things was I called in every single favor I've ever had in education in my entire life. I called every favor, anything time I did any. If I lifted a box for you, I called in and asked, "Can you look at this document for me real quick?" I literally did. I called it. I don't probably have any favors left in education. I have to build my equity back up again. But I was able to get the application in with a fantastic and wonderful board. I have 14 board members, which is extremely high for education. And what's special about our board is that it's mutually exclusive of black and brown women. I think that's extremely important for for myself when I was putting this board together. 70% of the teaching force in this country is women. Most households, research says that education and health decisions are made by moms, aunties, grandmas. So I wanted a board that kind of looked like that. And they all come from finance, education. One's a professor, one's still in college, one's a teacher. They are just like a wealth of fantastic and wonderful human beings that are helping me put this vision out there. And a couple weeks ago, we had public comment where the community was able to come out and say if they were pro or against us, and they were able to come out and show their support for our school. So right now, we are just kind of waiting out the process for the next step in the process. And right now, we're just enjoying the summer and getting the word out to parents about what we can offer, and just trying to give them another option. That's the biggest thing. It's not to embarrass the school district or make them look bad or say that their teachers are not good. It's just to afford parents another option. That's all. We just want to give people another option.
George, I'm really excited for you because I think that what you're doing is lending innovation in a space that hasn't had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
innovation, at least real innovation. I think we've kind of moved around the deck chairs on the Titanic a bit, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
really excited for the work you're doing. I want to hear about how you balance family
Mm-hmm.
as an educator and the lessons you've learned, again, kind of from bad bosses and like what you've taken and like for your family and things that you will or will not do.
I think what I've learned is, I think when I became a parent later on in my career.
Oh,
So
are you one of those old parents?
I am one of those old parents because I am. I have an 8-year old and 40 years old. So when I say that to people, they're like, "Oh, you're old. Your kid is gonna be, you're gonna be almost 50 when your kid goes to college." I'm like, okay, I like not realizing like, oh, okay, I'm old, an older parent, sure. So I'm an older parent, so I think I was able to learn a lot, especially by being an educator. When you're in the classroom, you see so many kids, and I think what I early on I did in the classroom, which wasn't the right thing to think and have the mindset. I used to say, well, I'm not going to do that as a parent, but not understanding like every parent situation is slightly a bit different. And I think what made me realize as an educator after being like a dad is just understanding that like every decision you make, you're trying to make it in the best interest of your child. And sometimes it doesn't come off that way. So, I would often like I realize now having a daughter that, when I was in the classroom as a teacher, I used to say like girls were bossy. But I would never say boys were bossy. I would never say that. But as I got older in my career and was able to do a lot of reading and research and understand that like it's like, oh, that's my own bias. So I stopped saying it. I used to say like, no, she just has really good leadership skills. That's all. We just got to find a better way to harness those. So she's not bossy. She just has really good leadership skills. We just have to harness those better. So like those sorts of things, I think really has helped me as like a parent and an educator. I think for my leadership style, I think the biggest thing I was able to take away from all the 1500s of building leaders that I've ever had in my entire career is that I think being able to understand your staff is the most important thing. Just being humble, and I never want to ask a staff member to do something I wouldn't do myself. So if that means helping to serve lunch, covering a class, teaching third grade for a day because the teacher is out, like those sorts of things go a long way with your staff to be able to understand like he's in the fight with us every single day. Like he understands. He has a lot of things on his plate that's different than mine, but he's willing to come into our classroom and teach for 3.5 hours. Like that's gonna go a long way with a teacher than anything else I can do.
I think those are wonderful lessons. I want to ask you one last question as we
Sure.
wrap our conversation.
Hmm?
What would you say to the early in career teacher or even the middle career teacher who's dealing with a bad leadership situation in their work environment? What's one survival skill you try to give them?
Find your group of people that make you want to be able to come to work every day. But most importantly, make sure that those 25, 30 faces looking back at you know that you're there for them, making sure that you're still empathetic and all that frustration that you might have towards that leader or principal that's in your building or instructional coach, whoever is giving you that high level of frustration, that you're putting all of that emphasis into your classroom. And then in your spare time, try to make sure that you are thinking of other innovative ideas. So find those 2 or 3 people that have that same level of frustration and work on a separate plan. Maybe opening up a school or developing a fellowship that you can maybe go to the superintendent about, that you want to be able to work on some level of leadership. And then being able to see how can you leverage yourself to be able to say moving forward, like, okay, I see all the things that they're doing wrong. So when I become a leader, I'm not going to do that, because everything's a teachable moment. So you can learn from a bad boss. You can learn from a good boss. You can take skills from both and be able to say, I want to be like that when I become a leader, or I don't want to be like that. So I think that's the biggest thing.
George, it has been awesome to have you on. So you're
It's been my pleasure as well.
now what? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Today's episode is brought to you by Natalie Parker Enterprises, where we shape the future and unlock potential by helping organizations and people work together to do good work. Find out more at thenatalieparker.com. Or if you'd like to be a sponsor, email us at info@thenatalieparker.com.